I married Linda thinking love would be enough. Maybe not to make me a father, but enough to make me belong. Her children, Evan and Mia, came as part of the arrangement, like furniture she couldn't part with. They weren't toddlers, but they weren't grown either. Old enough to remember the man who used to pour their cereal and tuck them in, young enough to still reach for a hand in a dark hallway. I learned their routines like a second job. School drop-offs, grocery lists, teacher conferences, pediatric appointments. I took it on the way you take on a renovation, hammer in hand, quietly assuming that if you just worked hard enough, eventually the cracks would vanish. Tom, their biological father, was a shadow with charm. The kind of man who drifted in like warm weather, unannounced, unreliable, but somehow never unwelcome. When he did show up, he brought chaos in the form of pizza boxes and loud stories, promises of summer road trips that never materialized, expensive gifts wrapped in guilt and short attention spans. They looked at him like he was magic. They looked at me like I was noise. But I stayed. When Mia needed braces, I paid. When Evan fell off his bike and cracked his arm, I was the one who waited 8 hours in emergency and filled out the paperwork. I kept insurance cards in my wallet, memorized their shoe sizes, showed up to science fairs with posters rolled under my arm. I was the man who didn't vanish. I told myself I wasn't here to replace their father. That wasn't the job. I was just here to show up, day after day, month after month, year after year. And I did. They didn't ask me to. Linda never demanded it. But silence has a way of shaping you. The first time Evan asked for help with college applications, I felt a strange pride. He didn't thank me, but he asked. That was enough. I bought him his first laptop, paid the security deposit for his campus apartment. When Linda's hours got cut and things got tight, I picked up more freelance work, cut corners, sold my old truck. I told no one, not even her. Felt good to be needed, even if I wasn't wanted. When Evan got his degree, we celebrated in the backyard. I paid for the catering, took the group photos. Tom showed up late in a linen shirt and sunglasses, made a toast that ended in him crying about how proud he was. Evan laughed and hugged him. I stayed quiet. I was the one who paid the invoice. That's all anyone saw. Over time, I took on more. Holidays, dental, Mia's travel abroad, Evan's car repairs. Every birthday, every broken phone, every whispered emergency that never reached Tom's voicemail. They came to me. Linda and I stopped talking about money. It just became assumed. Her salary barely covered groceries. Mine covered everything else. I didn't keep a ledger. I didn't need one. I wasn't giving for recognition. I was giving because that's what men like me do when no one else steps up. And then Evan got engaged. He told Linda first, not me. I found out when she came home with a bottle of wine and a smile I hadn't seen in months. He proposed to Natalie, she said, holding the bottle like it was the engagement ring itself. I smiled, said I was happy for them, asked what the plan was. Within days, there was a binder on the kitchen table. Venues, guest lists, dress shops, catering companies. Linda was in her element. She'd always wanted a big wedding. And Evan played along, but the way he talked about it, the way he brushed past me in conversation, I could feel it. I was there for the wallet, not the name, not the fatherly speeches, just the numbers. Still, I nodded along. I made calls, booked deposits, wired money. When the wedding planner asked who the final invoices should go to, I said, "Send them to me." She smiled like she'd seen it 100 times before. I paid for the venue. I paid for the catering. I paid for the planner. I even paid for the engagement party. Some restaurant Linda liked outside the city, the kind where you order wine by the bottle and the waitstaff don't write anything down. It was meant to be a warm-up for the main event. Close family. A few speeches. A slideshow. I was even ready to raise a glass. I wore the same suit I'd worn to every graduation, every milestone. The one Mia once said made me look too old for selfies. I sat quietly at the end of the table, sipping from a glass I paid for, in a room I rented, surrounded by people I had carried without complaint. Then it happened. Evan stood up, raised his glass. And in the middle of a half-drunken speech about love and beginnings, he turned toward me, smiled, and said it loud enough to quiet the room. "You're just wallets and losers. Your place is at the table for the elderly." The room laughed. Not all of them, but enough. Some covered their mouths. Some looked away. But the laughter was real. Linda giggled. And she didn't stop him. She didn't even look at me. The kind of silence that cuts deeper than any insult. I said nothing. I didn't flinch. I didn't clear my throat or raise my voice or wait for him to take it back. I stood up, adjusted my jacket, and walked out of the restaurant like it wasn't burning behind me. Got in the car. Drove home in silence. Not because I was hurt, but because I had heard him. I had heard everything. He didn't see me. Not as a father. Not as a man. I was a placeholder with a bank account. A seat filler at the edge of his life story. 16 years of sacrifice reduced to a joke at a rented table. And Linda? Her silence was louder than the laughter. She didn't defend me. Didn't put a hand on my arm. Didn't tell him to stop. Because maybe deep down she agreed. Maybe I was just a wallet with a heartbeat. The restaurant lights disappeared in the rearview mirror. I didn't drive fast. I didn't even turn on the radio. Just silence, thick and absolute. The kind that settles into your ribs like cold water. The kind that lets every word echo. Wallets and losers. Your place is at the table for the elderly. Not stepdad. Not thank you. Not even you've done enough. Just a punchline and a mother who laughed at it. I got home, slipped off the jacket, loosened the tie, sat at the kitchen table like a man coming down from war. The hum of the refrigerator was louder than any apology that never came. There was no apology. Not that night. Not the next morning. No text from Linda. No call from Evan. Nothing but silence, the same kind I'd carried for years. So I opened my laptop. The wedding planner's email was still open. A cheerful subject line, "Excited for the big day." Attached was a spreadsheet, payment timelines, vendor contacts, cancellation policies. I read it like a will. The venue required 50% upfront. Paid by me. The catering invoice was scheduled to auto-withdraw in 2 days. I canceled it. The decorator? Already halfway through designing table arrangements for a man she'd never met. Her next installment was pending. I reversed it. Florals. Photographer. Live quartet. The officiant's travel stipend. All blocked. All gone. No rage. No shouting. Just a few passwords. A few clicks. And years of quiet resentment finally becoming something real. I didn't leave a note. I didn't write a message. I simply removed myself. Not from their lives, just from the bills. They wanted Tom? They could have him. Let's see if disappearing runs in the blood. I logged out, closed the lid, went upstairs and slept better than I had in months. The phone started ringing the next morning. First Linda, then Evan, then Linda again. Her voice sounded strange on voicemail. Tight, clipped, like someone rehearsing panic but not quite sure if they deserve to feel it yet. "Hey, I think something's wrong with the planner's payment portal. Call me?" Then, "The florist says the account bounced? Did you change cards?" Then Evan, "Yo, what the hell's going on? The band says they haven't been paid. Fix it. Fix it. No please. No sorry. Just a command." They still thought I worked for them. By noon, there were 23 missed calls. By 5 p.m., I had blocked every number except the plumber, the only man who ever showed up when he said he would. By nightfall, I learned Tom had stepped away. That was the phrase Linda used in a voicemail I didn't answer. He said he'd help with some parts, but now he's not responding. I don't know what's going on. I did. The second the bills showed up, so did the exit signs. Tom was a man of performances. He showed up for cake and applause, not invoices. And now the curtain had dropped. They were alone. And for the first time, they noticed. The panic hit in waves. The wedding planner called to check on updated payment details. Then emailed. Then texted. I didn't answer. Evan sent a group message titled, "This is really unfair." I didn't open it. Linda left voicemails that started warm, turned confused, and ended cold. I just need to know if you're done helping or if this is just temporary. That word, helping, stuck like a nail. Helping. Like I was a stranger who occasionally pitched in. Helping is what you do with groceries when your neighbor is sick. I wasn't helping. I was carrying. For years. And they didn't even know what it weighed. Evan tried again. This time louder, angrier. You're ruining this for everyone. Natalie's family is asking questions. Do you even realize what you're doing to her? I almost laughed. Not at the cruelty, but at the convenience. Suddenly I mattered again. Not as a man. Not as a father. Just as a funding source. A line item that had been quietly moved from confirmed to missing. They were right. I was ruining something. I was ruining the illusion that I didn't matter. That I was replaceable. That Tom, with his stories and absences, could fill my seat. I had built this wedding like I'd built everything else. Brick by brick, in the dark, without thanks. And now I had stopped. That was my betrayal. That was my sin. Linda came home late that night. She didn't say hello. Didn't ask about dinner. Just stood in the doorway like a stranger in her own house. Her keys jingled in her hand. She wasn't crying. She was calculating. You embarrassed Evan, she said, her voice steady. I looked at her. I left quietly. She nodded. But you walked out. Yes, I said, after he called me a loser. In public. She flinched just slightly. He was drinking. He didn't mean. I cut her off. He said it. And you laughed. Her lips tightened. It was a joke. No, I said. It was a declaration. We stood in silence. Married, technically. United by paperwork and taxes. But miles apart. Connected only by the echo of a room full of people who saw me walk out and didn't stop me. She sat down across from me, finally. You've blocked everything, she said. Not a question. A fact. Yes. Her hands folded. So what happens now? I shrugged. Whatever Evan and Tom decide. I'm not involved. You're his father. No, I said quietly. I was his provider. It landed like a slap. I carried him, I said. I paid. I stayed. But he chose. Linda's eyes darkened. He's scared. He made a mistake. You're punishing all of us because of a toast. No, I said again. I'm not punishing. I'm respecting his words. She looked at me like she didn't recognize the man sitting across from her. And maybe she didn't. Maybe she thought I'd keep going. That the engine I'd become would run forever without fuel. I stood. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. Her voice wavered. We have to talk about this. We just did. I walked down the hall. Closed the door behind me. Not with anger. Not with bitterness. But with clarity. For the first time in 16 years, I was no longer afraid of being called not a real father. They had made it official. I was out. And I was free. The guest room smelled like dust and forgotten seasons. Boxes lined the far wall. Things we never unpacked from the last move. Old curtains, picture frames that never found a nail, photo albums with gaps where Tom's face had been carefully avoided. I sat on the edge of the bed for a long time, hands resting on my knees, listening to the house I used to believe was mine. Linda didn't knock. She never came to the door. Maybe she was waiting for me to cave. I used to. The first few years were full of compromises. Swallowing things, patching cracks, apologizing for tension I didn't cause. But something had shifted now. Not like a snapped thread, more like a worn bolt finally giving way. By morning, I had removed my name from the wedding account entirely. It had been set up jointly, my card on file, my name as guarantor. I called the bank, told them I no longer authorized any future charges. The representative asked if I wanted to be notified of any attempted withdrawals. I said yes. Let me watch them try. The first bounced payment came that afternoon. The florist. Then the photographer. Then the planner's second invoice. Each time I got a text, payment failed. The alerts came like applause. Cold, digital affirmations that I was no longer invisible. Around 5 p.m., I got a message from Natalie's mother. Hi. I understand there's been some kind of mistake with the rehearsal dinner venue? Evan said you were handling that? I stared at the message for a full minute before typing 2 words. Ask Evan. No response. Then Evan called. He didn't start with hello. He didn't ask if I was okay. Just launched into it, all heat, no direction. What are you doing? Do you have any idea how this looks? Yes, I said. It looks honest. He didn't like that. People are calling me. Vendors. Natalie's parents. You're making me look like a fool. No, I said, keeping my voice level. You did that yourself. I'm just stepping out of the spotlight. You can't just bail, he shouted. It's too late. It wasn't too late to call me a loser in front of a room full of people. He went quiet for a second. I heard his breath on the line, short and angry. That was a joke, he muttered. No, that was a mirror. You said what you felt. And I finally believed you. He hung up. Linda didn't speak to me that night. She sat across from me at the dinner table like a woman stuck in a motel with a stranger. Mia tried to make conversation. Some comment about her summer internship, but the room was thick with something heavier than silence. Nobody asked me how my day went. No one ever really had. It didn't take long for the panic to spread. The wedding planner dropped the contract. The florist kept the deposit but canceled all further deliveries. The venue sent a notice. Final payment due in 72 hours or date released. I could see them scrambling. Evan, Linda, even Natalie's side, trying to patch holes in a ship they'd assumed I would steer forever. And where was Tom? Gone. Of course. When Evan reached out to him, and I know he did because I saw the call logs on our shared phone plan, he didn't answer. Then he answered once. The call lasted 47 seconds. Long enough to say no. Long enough to leave Evan gasping. They were learning the difference between a man who smiles in pictures and a man who signs checks. Tom was the former. I had always been the latter. The reality settled in quickly. The big wedding, the one Linda had been dreaming about since Evan's first tooth fell out, was shrinking by the hour. They tried moving it to a community center. Tried hiring a cheaper caterer. Talked about borrowing decorations from friends. Natalie's parents offered to cover the photographer if Evan could just handle the music and officiant. He couldn't, and I wouldn't. I had become the villain in a story I never wrote. Linda started sleeping in Mia's room. Said it was temporary. Said I was impossible to be around right now. I didn't argue. Let her drift down the hall like a ghost that had finally remembered it wasn't tied to me. Evan stopped texting. He switched to emailing. Formal messages. Cold grammar. No contractions. Please reconsider your withdrawal from the financial commitments previously agreed upon. He was trying to sound professional. Like we were business partners instead of a boy and the man who raised him. I ignored it. 2 days later, Linda finally snapped. We were in the kitchen. I was making coffee. She stood behind me, arms crossed, voice like gravel. You've made your point. I didn't answer. You've humiliated your family. Is that what you wanted? I turned, slowly. No, I said. I wanted respect. I wanted to matter. I wanted to not be laughed at by the son I raised in a restaurant I paid for. She shook her head. You're punishing him for being young. For being stupid. I set the mug down. I'm not punishing him. I'm showing him what life without me looks like. You raised him to believe that Tom was family and I was furniture. Now the furniture has moved out. She went quiet. Her mouth opened, closed. You're not the victim here, she said finally. I'm not, I agreed. I'm the exit plan you overused. That night, Mia came into the guest room. Quiet, hesitant. She sat on the floor beside the bed like she was 12 again and afraid of thunderstorms. He didn't mean it, she said. Evan, he was drinking. You know how he is. I know, I said. Mom's losing it, she whispered. She thinks you're going to divorce her. I didn't respond. She looked up at me with eyes too old for her age. Are you? I don't know. She stayed a while. Didn't talk much after that. Just sat there, absorbing the silence. Then she left. like a child sneaking out of a room that doesn't belong to her anymore. I don't know what Linda told her. Maybe she painted me as unstable, vindictive, cold. But none of it mattered, because Evan said what he said. And Linda didn't stop him. That was the moment the contract broke. Not the financial one, the human one. And now I wait. Let them panic. Let them scramble. This is what consequence looks like. Not raised voices or broken plates, but silence and a locked wallet. The wedding went ahead. Smaller, rushed, rearranged. They moved it to a vineyard an hour out of town. Not the original place that one had released the date when final payment failed. This new venue had plastic chairs and no sound system. The aisle was uneven gravel. The flowers were picked up the morning of from a grocery store, stuffed into mason jars. The music came from a Bluetooth speaker. The photographer canceled last minute, and someone's cousin stepped in with an iPhone and shaky hands. I didn't go. There was no invite. Not that I needed one. I already knew my place. I watched the wedding unfold through other people's social media. Low angles, shaky videos, polite captions. No mentions of me. No thanks. No trace that I had ever been part of the original plan. I saw Tom in 2 pictures. One beside Evan, grinning in a wrinkled shirt. Another dancing with Linda, his hand on her waist like no time had passed at all. He'd returned, if only briefly, when he realized I was truly gone. I was replaced in the same way you'd replace a missing coat hook. Not with something better, just something that happened to be there. Linda came home late that night. She didn't speak, didn't look at me, just went to the bedroom and closed the door. I stayed in the guest room. I'd grown used to the quiet. Over the next few weeks, the house shifted. Evan didn't visit. Mia kept her distance. Linda moved through the rooms like a tenant. She cooked for herself, washed her own clothes, made 2 separate grocery lists, hers and mine. There were no more shared dinners. No Sunday mornings. No soft laughter drifting from the kitchen. Just silence. And 2 people occupying the same space like ghosts who refused to cross paths. Once, I caught her staring at me while I was fixing the window blinds. Her face was hard to read. Some blend of resentment and something close to regret. She didn't say a word. Neither did I. That became the pattern. Occasional stares. Never a conversation. Never a reckoning. They'd hoped I would soften. That my silence was a tactic, not a decision. That I would come around, pay a few bills to help them out again. That the wound would scab over the way it always had. But I didn't, because something inside me had changed. It wasn't just about Evan's words. It was the years leading up to them, the quiet dismissals, the absence of gratitude, the way my presence had been tolerated but never welcomed. I had given everything. Money, time, care. Years I'll never get back. And when it counted, when I was mocked, erased, humiliated, no one stood up for me. That truth stayed with me. Not like a scar, but like a law. Evan called once. 3 months after the wedding. Said they were short on rent. Something about the honeymoon expenses having gone over budget. Natalie had lost a freelance gig. He sounded tired. Less arrogant. More real. I wouldn't ask, he said. But you know how things are right now. I figured. If you could spot me this once. I listened. And I waited. For the word. Not dad. Not even thank you. Just sorry. It never came. So I said no. He hung up. The next time I saw Linda, her arms were crossed. Defensive. Cold. He's your son. No, I said. He's Tom's. You raised him. I paid for him, I corrected. And when I stopped, he stopped seeing me. She looked like she might cry, but didn't. Maybe she'd run out of tears. Maybe she was too proud. That was the last real conversation we had. 2 weeks later, she moved into the spare bedroom. Took Mia with her. The separation wasn't announced. It just happened. Like a light going out in a room no one used anymore. And I stopped being a father in every sense, not because I changed, but because I finally told the truth with my actions. I no longer paid for the phone plans. I stopped contributing to Mia's college fund. I unsubscribed from everything with Evan's name on it. No more Amazon orders. No more streaming services for the family. No more credit card charges that showed up with vague descriptions and teenage indifference. I didn't do it loudly. I didn't make a scene. I just stopped. The silence that followed was louder than any speech I could have given. And they noticed. Eventually, I got an email from Linda. Not a conversation. Just a digital letter. Polite, cold, asking if I wanted to redefine the terms of our relationship. She used words like boundary and transition. I didn't reply, because I had already defined the terms. Respect or nothing. And they had chosen nothing. The funny thing is, when you stop giving, you start seeing. You see how conditional everything was. How little love there actually was beneath the routines and the shared photos and the forced smiles at holiday tables. You see how people orbit you not out of loyalty, but out of utility. Once you stop being useful, you stop being seen. And what remains? Silence. Not peaceful silence. Not the kind you earn after a long day, but the kind that exposes the truth. That you were never family. Just a service. I thought the worst part would be losing them. It wasn't. The worst part was realizing they were never mine to lose. I had built a life around people who saw me as a convenience. I gave and gave and gave. And when I finally asked, not for love, not for devotion, but for basic respect, they recoiled like I'd asked for blood. I started seeing a lawyer. Not for divorce yet. Just consultations. Linda doesn't know. Or maybe she does. Maybe she's waiting to see how long I'll hold this line. She still says good night sometimes. Not every night. Just enough to keep the illusion alive. But I don't respond. Because I know now. Silence is not cruelty. It's clarity. I've learned that love without respect is exploitation. That sacrifice, when unacknowledged, becomes servitude. That being the one who stays only matters if the people you stay for want you there. I stayed too long. I mistook duty for acceptance. Provision for belonging. Tolerance for love. Never again. So here's my question to you. Was I wrong? Was I cruel to pull the plug after being erased in public? Should I have kept paying? Kept nodding? Kept swallowing disrespect for the sake of family? Or was this the only way left to teach them? That the man they mocked was the man who held everything together. Would you have stayed? Would you have paid? Would you have endured it?